Well, what makes a first world country a first world country? Well, for America, a big part of it started in the Industrial Revolution when machines and mechanics kind of went beyond just bare survival, human farming. Most third world countries lived a very primitive life around farming and not too many machinery components. Now we're going towards a technology era, right, where computers, software, AI is bringing us to another level of evolution. But when countries a couple hundred years ago were living off the land, it was the Industrial Revolution that modernized societies. And then first world countries started to develop and expand. And part of that first world environment is the machinery that provides climate control. And part of that first world country is infrastructure, electrical grid, plumbing, sewer system. And this ability to make structures, sound homes with running water, with electricity, and all the components to control an environment, to keep you safe, and to farm the land at have greater fun. There's a motorcycle racing behind me. Those motorcycles are part of the Industrial Revolution, right? A couple hundred years ago, there'd be horses behind me. And a couple hundred years from now, you won't hear motorcycles, there'll be electrical scooters. But I'm saying all that to say, the Industrial Revolution brought in a first world country. And if you look at other countries in today's society that are kind of like what considered a third world country, you can see a lot of them live primitive, out of basic shelters of mud, of clay, not of they don't have building codes. They don't have concrete at a certain grade. They don't have electrical codes. They just have basics just above primitive survival. And the best way to compare, or the best way to understand a third world country for someone living in a first world country, is to go camping. Camping, when you're out of a tent, is pretty much very similar to a third world country. I have some friends that are from the Philippines, and if you look at some YouTube videos from people living in the Philippines, you'll see that a lot of it is like camping, a lot of their homes, right? And because even some RVs that you may see at a campground, I mean, they're almost like cost-wise and structure-wise the same as a home in a first world country, right? So camping, even in a first world country, has become what they call glamping. But basic camping, whether you're out of a tent or very small, simple RV, is very similar to what it's like to have a regular house in a third world country. And when you're not hooked up to the grid, and you see that a little bit now with the tiny homes and the, different things like that, and some people that live off the land, that's a very similar thing. So why would anyone in a first world country want to live like you're in a third world country? Because the whole point of life is to try to move forward and advance and evolve and grow and make life easier, not harder. Well, I would say that's true. You really, I even say that to myself, living very simple, out of a bag, living a primitive lifestyle. But in many regards, even when I was living on the road full time, I'm in populated suburban areas with Starbucks, gyms. These all have climate control, very safe structures, every amenity you want, food at every, gas station, Walmart, grocery store. So what I've learned is, in a first world country where you have infrastructure throughout, if you travel to certain areas, you don't need to carry all the infrastructure with you all the time, because you can tap into society, right? And that's the benefit of living in a first world country, is you can, at any time you choose, you can tap into the benefits of society. If you want to be an outcast and you don't like society, you don't like the structure of society, just remember, every time you go to Walmart, every time you go to the gas station, every time you drive on a road to go camping, you're tapping into society. And that's what, there's a big hypocrisy of people that say, oh, first world country, capitalism, it's all evil. And, I'm not going to partake in it. Well, then if you're watching this, you're partaking in it. Why? The internet is the reception, the cell phones, all these things are first world country, society driven, government backed functions that make life easier. From the cell phone to your clothes, to the streets, to the stores. So, if you begrudge society, I hope you don't watch this because you don't have internet. You farm your own land and you don't tell anyone because you don't see anyone, and you never go to the doctor, you never go anywhere. You're self-contained. It's not life. Life's not meant to be like that. You need society to move forward. You need unity. You need groups of people. Even if you want to be an individual, you need both. But what I'm sharing with you is there can become, in a first world country, an out of balance where you're obtaining too many things that you don't need, and you're going way beyond primitive, and you don't need to, and you overextend yourself, and you trap yourself not just in debt but in things, because even if you have the money, a lot of things, materialistic trappings, could hurt you. Some materialistic things are good, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying the fruits of your labor, so balance that. But the hard part is to discipline yourself in a first world country, because in a first world country, you can go to a buffet. You can eat all the foods you want for not too much money. In a third world country, it may not be as easy to have the money, to have the safe food, et cetera, to have the shelter, to have the job opportunities, et cetera. And so I'm saying all this to say, right, if you can remember that if you're in a first world country, if you can take aspects of a third world country, not to have too much stuff, not to have too big a house, square footage wise, not to have too many or too much car, right? Have a car because it's part of the industrial era, but don't have such an expensive car that you go above your means. Now, I'll make an exception because I've had expensive cars. When you're young, it's time to enjoy life. So I'm not going to begrudge anyone for anything because I did it, right? So, but this is, I guess, more as you become older and you get more in balance, because, when you're young, there's a time for that. When you're old, there's a time for stuff. And everything has a time, right? So, but I could tell you, if you're young and you go and you keep getting cars and you keep buying houses, you never get ahead. And in my 30s, I kind of stopped that cycle, right? So everything is like you experience it, but then if it's going to a negative place, you have to, reverse the cycle, stop the cycle. And I kind of, obviously went in the opposite way where I'm almost living like I'm in a third world country, and now I'm trying to find that middle ground, right, where you have things to enjoy the comforts, but not too many things, because you don't need too many things. You don't need too much square footage. You don't need a $70,000 truck. You may be good with a $30,000, $25,000 Kia. Again, for older people or more mature people, there's a time for everything. I did a lot of things, so I can't begrudge people. This is, the same thing out. Your biggest expenses in life are having children or a pet. Having children or a pet is number one, because those expenses never go away to a big extent. Number two is a house, your shelter. The size of it is going to equate to the cost. And if anything, spend a little bit more to be in a nice area with good culture versus bigger square footage in a bad area and or with bad culture. And economics is not the only thing, because what I found on my journey is you can live in a nice neighborhood economically, but there still be bad culture. So, that's one thing you'll have to be mindful of. Culture matters. A lot of people say, I'll do a separate video on this, that real estate location, I've even said it. But not always true. If the culture of the community is not good, forget the location. Okay? Obviously, location matters, but you have to also get along with the people in your community and the surrounding community outside your community. Why? Life's all about people. The people you work with, the people you live with, the community you live in, the community that is outside of your direct community. I mean, you want to feel good about that, or else, you're fighting your inner circle per se. So if you can remember that in some regards, you're fortunate to live in a first world country, but in some regards, people in a third world country understand that you could be happy living a primitive life. And if you go camping in a first world country, when you look at the tents or the very small RVs, that's like third world country. And people go on vacation in a first world country and they go camping. And why do they do that? Well, I think because they try to get back to a level of simplicity. But over time, you'll even see the campgrounds now. I mean, they got $200,000, $500,000 RVs. So even that's kind of gone too far, right? So, it's like being at the buffet. You got to be careful when you have all these choices, and when you have the ability to take on debt, and when you have the ability to eat more than you need, we go too far. All of us, humans, we overreach. And so discipline is kind of pulling yourself back, which is very hard, man, very hard. And we all fail, so I don't say that in judgment. But I'm just saying, like, the conclusion and the main purpose of this video was to say that, as in some regards, I've lived the first world country excess. In other times in my life, I've lived like the primitive third world country, bare essentials, off the grid type life. And what I can tell you is, if you can live in a first world country, get a job in a first world country, tap into the resources of a first world country, but remember, in some regards, to a certain extent, live like you're in a third world country, which basically means live below your means, right? And don't have all this excess, and you could still be happy, and you have the benefit of living in a first world country. That's how you get ahead. But that takes discipline, and we all fail, but that's a goal. It's like you have goals in life, you don't always reach them, but it's like you aim for the moon, even if you miss, you're amongst the stars. And so, remember that, with your house, with your car, with your life, with your material possessions, don't begrudge them. Enjoy the fruits of your labor. But don't indulge in them. I remember I was dating a girl, and I was a little bit mentally obsessing over her. And I remember she told me, she goes, Sam, don't indulge in your thoughts. Because she empathized, because she was obsessing over some other guy. And that's what you got to remember too in life. You will break people's hearts, and other people will break your hearts. And that's what I remembered. Like, when I was getting down on myself, I said, man, she got the best of me. I think about all the times in my life that, girls like me more than I like them. And you have to pull yourself back. And that's how you pull yourself back. Because if you start to think like, oh, everyone I like doesn't like me, think about the people that like you, but you don't like them as much. And that helps you balance your mindset and be fair and move forward and be empathetic, because you've been on both sides of the fence, right? So either way, I hope this video helped kind of talking about how to get ahead in a first world country by actually having aspects of a third world country that are positive, which is to not live in excess. Obviously, you don't want to live a totally deprived life, which sometimes you may, with your diet or with your materialistic things, but you're always trying to find that balance, So hopefully this video helped. If it did, click the thumbs up, share it, subscribe, leave a positive comment, and I thank you for watching.